Did you know that there are more than 180,000 Chrome extensions in the Chrome Web Store?
Yeah, and that's interesting. And did you know that over half of all Chrome users have an extension installed?
That's crazy. That's a really high number. I wonder why more enterprises are developing and deploying their own apps and extensions.
I also wonder that. We should probably talk about that on this episode of CloudUp.
Welcome to CloudUp, a web series where we explore the coolest things that are being built in the cloud today, sponsored by Agosto. So for starters, everyone's probably seen or used a Chrome app or extension, but we want to start today by talking about some of the differences and then maybe deep dive in on why you use one or the other. So Ray, what are some of the differences between an extension and an app? I know we use both and we use them similarly, but they are different.
Yeah, so an extension, Chrome extension, you think of it more like a utility. So the features are limited and it allows quick access to some of Chrome's functionality. So there are specific APIs in the Chrome OS. You can access some of those APIs using an extension. The extension, you've probably seen it before. It's a little icon up in the top, right? And so it doesn't have a full UI. So you can click on it and you can get a little bit of UI, but it's different than an app because a Chrome app is basically a web app where you can have a full UI, basically like a web page.
Yeah, I know that an extension really kind of changes the browsing experience in some way, and then also an app mimics more of a native app or an app right on the actual computer itself, even though it is a fancy web page.
Right. And the actual APIs that are available are different from extensions to apps. So sometimes you need to use an extension to do things like install certificates and things like that, where apps you wouldn't do that with. You might have an app actually call an extension to do that, so you sometimes will use the two together.
All right, so now that we know the differences between an app and extension, let's take a few minutes, talk about how they are made, maybe why you use one over the other, and why you would choose to develop an app over an extension, and also, like you mentioned, how you use them together. But before we do that, let's take a minute and acknowledge our sponsor, the fancy name on this cup here, and we'll dive into that in a second.
More and more, we're seeing organizations want to be really strategic with their success, and part of that means they're moving to the cloud. At Agosto, we're seeing a big uptick in clients using Google Cloud Platform for their online business operations. So whether you're thinking you need a boost with AI, machine learning, or you just want to build something new and fast, Agosto is an award-winning partner who would be happy to help you with your needs. We've been Google's Cloud Partner of the Year multiple times. We've got a few other awards as well. And we would love for you to get to know more about us. Okay, I can't take anymore. By visiting Agosto.com, you can get a free guide to your company's strategic plan for heading to the cloud. We'd love to see you there. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to CloudUp. Now we're going to dive in a little bit and talk a little more technically about Chrome apps, extensions, why you use one or the other, how they're developed, and really what they do. So Ray, what are they written in? How do they work?
So an extension is basically like a web app. So you write an extension using HTML, CSS, JavaScript. You can use a lot of the JavaScript libraries that you normally would use to build a web app. And just about any front-end web developer would be able to use their favorite tools to build an application that is a Chrome app or extension for that matter.
And then if I'm a developer, how do I choose whether I'm going to write an app or extension?
So if what you're building has a UI to it, typically you would use an app. So think of a Chrome app as a web app. So and actually, what Google has done is they've changed things a bit in that now you can publish. You can only publish Chrome apps for Chrome OS. So you can run Chrome on. Everybody knows you can run Chrome on Linux and Windows Windows and Mac, wherever, right? And obviously on Chrome devices running Chrome OS. But as far as apps go, you can only build an app for Chrome OS. So Google does have a path where they describe how you would build a web app to replace your Chrome app in order to kind of have the same functionality for all users on the other platforms.
Okay, so if you have a web app, there's a way to basically rewrite that easily, so it would be a Chrome app, and then it would be more of a native experience on a Chrome device.
Right. You'd build a Chrome app, probably if you needed to have access to some of the APIs on the Chrome device.
Okay.
So the Chrome APIs give you access to the hardware. So you can access the serial ports, Bluetooth, things like that you wouldn't normally be able to access from a browser. So you wouldn't have access to those anyway if you're not using a Chrome OS device. So you would use, you'd probably just create a web app that's hosted on a web server instead of packaged together into an app that's installed on a Chrome device.
Can an extension have access to those things as well?
Yes, an extension can have access to those as well. There are different APIs that are available to extensions and apps. So in some cases, you might have to use an extension along with an app. We've seen that where we've had to have an extension that uses APIs to access some information on the device and then maybe launches a web app or a Chrome app.
And so that's a good example of how you use both together. Can you talk a little bit more about, like, you mentioned, you use the extension to launch the web app. Why wouldn't the extension just do all of it?
Because you don't get a full UI on an extension, right? If you've used a Chrome extension, usually you can click on the little icon in the upper right corner. That extension will show like a small UI there, but you don't have access to a full web app. Whereas with a Chrome app, you can do a whole progressive web app where it's full UI.
Mm-hmm. What do you think are the differences between other than just it feeling like a native app? What do you think the differences are between a web page, so a web app, or a Chrome app?
In most cases, there really isn't a difference. I think the key part to that is that you can access APIs in Chrome OS with a Chrome app. So that's kind of the power of using a Chrome device with an app is that you can access things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do so if you were just browsing to a web page.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit about some Chrome apps and extensions that are out there. So obviously, as we said earlier, there's a Chrome App Store, Chrome Web Store. It has over 180,000 apps, and that's growing every day. More than 50% of users use some kind of Chrome extension, whether it's in an enterprise setting or personally. Some of them are really simple. Some of them are things like Google has an extension. It's called Office Editing for docs, slides, and sheets. It's simply just a way to open up a doc or a Excel file in a browser and edit it, or even create it. It also works as an extension to Drive. And then there's some other Chrome apps that are used out there heavily. One of them that we are using here is called Grab and Go. It's an app that runs on a loaner Chrome devices that just helps make sure that if I take a loaner Chrome device, it knows who I am. It uses some of those APIs to save some of that information in a cloud portal and then manage that loan. So there doesn't need to be any IT interaction. Ray, what are we've done some custom development for some apps. What are some things that you've developed apps to do in the past?
So some of the apps that Agosto has built are one example is around certificate management. So one thing about these Chrome devices that's nice is that they're really secure devices. They have Google spent a lot of time on the security of these things, and so enterprise users or enterprises want to have a way to enroll these devices into their
Microsoft CA.
That would be one thing. Yeah. So we've built an app that allows for a white glove implementation. So imagine that you're an enterprise and you're ordering a bunch of these Chromebooks for your employees. We built an app that allows users to log into their Chromebook and it automatically downloads a certificate that allows those Chromebooks to connect to the corporate Wi-Fi. And it's kind of a seamless process. So
is that a user cert? Is that a device cert?
In the case of depends on the implementation.
Okay.
So in most cases, it ends up being user cert. It's installed on the device though, and it uses the TPM, which is a crypto chip built into the device to sign the certificates.
Okay. So it's injecting that cert right into the TPM chip.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So and that's one of the things. That's an example of we have to use some of the Chrome APIs to do that, obviously, and you can only do that with an application or an extension.
Okay. So something that's if it can't be done, can it be done in both apps and extensions, or does it have to be one or the other?
It actually uses a combination of both in that case.
Okay.
So in one of the enrollment apps we've built, there's a UI to it that might ask a user so if it's like a retail situation, a user will get a new device, they'll go to log in, it might ask them a store number, it might ask them their name or some other information.
Mm-hmm.
That since there's UI there, we build an app for that, and then when they click go, it would launch an extension. The extension would do the certificate stuff.
Yeah, so that's another great example of how extensions and apps work together.
Yep.
Let's talk about, so if we develop this extension, how do we get it to our devices? So if I'm a developer at my company and I put together this and I build this extension to do certs, how do I get it to all these devices that I've got out in the field?
So there's a Chrome Web Store.
Okay.
So if you've ever downloaded a certificate or if you've ever downloaded an app or an extension, you've gone to the Chrome Web Store. So one thing Google has integrated is the Chrome Web Store into kind of the enterprise admin console that they have.
Mm-hmm.
So as an admin, you can configure all your Chromebooks or some part of them, or users, since that specifically when they log into the Chromebook, it'll automatically download whatever extensions and apps you've defined to allow them to download.
Okay. So if I develop an extension for my organization, does everyone that has access to the Chrome Web Store, even consumers, have access to that app?
Not usually. You can make it that way, okay, but you have your own private web store.
Okay. So there's a web store that's specific to my organization then?
Yep.
How about apps and extensions that I don't want my users to have access to? What happens to that?
Oh, you can blacklist apps. You can whitelist apps. So you have kind of full control over what can be installed on the Chrome device.
Great. So essentially there's the web store. I can make my own web store for my organization. Maybe put some things out there that the user can go choose themselves to download. Like maybe have a small store just for my, or a small Chrome app store just for my company, and they can choose and pick and choose, and then I can force install some too, correctly?
Yep. You can force them. You can put and you can add apps obviously that are from any of the apps in the web store.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have a combination of apps that already exist. And then if you've created your own apps, of course, you can add those to that private web store as well. Okay,
that's cool. And then, I know we've also had this other mode on Chrome called Kiosk mode. Let's talk about that in a little bit. Obviously, Kiosk mode locks down a Chromebook or Chrome device, any kind of Chrome device. It could be a Chromebox, Chromebase, Chromebook, Chromebit, to one application or extension. And it's really used for one purpose. Let's talk about how that works with apps and extensions really quick.
Sure. So Kiosk mode is really cool because what you do is you again, in the admin console that Google provides, you can configure a device by its device ID to start up in Kiosk mode, which means that nobody has access to log into it. It automatically starts an app that you choose. So configure this device to launch this app when it boots up. Mm-hmm. And that app, in a lot of cases, probably may not have a UI, or it might have a UI. associated with it. So if it's like a touchscreen device, people will create apps that are interactive, and but they don't have to worry about people trying to go to a web page or do other stuff
because it's locked.
It's locked to that app.
Got it.
So there are obviously there are several apps out there that do that. We have actually built an app called SkyKit that's a digital display product. That same thing. Basically, when you order SkyKit, you get a Chrome device configured to launch the SkyKit app, and it really can't do anything else. So
it's just locked to that app.
Yep, you plug it in, it starts up, it starts the SkyKit app, it goes and grabs content and displays that content.
Yeah, and I know 2 other use cases that I've got. We have a couple other customers using. One of them is using a Kiosk app as a deli ordering system in a grocery store. So I walk in and there's a Chrome tablet there that's already launched to an app that they developed. I can order my deli order and it's obviously sends it off. And once I'm done, it's ready for the next person. Another one I see a lot is time clocks. People lock down just the web page to time clock, and if I'm an hourly employee, I can come in, punch in my employee ID or scan or whatever it might be, and it's still just locked to that one app.
So we've been talking about kiosk mode. From what I understand, there are Google has actually created some sort of wrapper application that makes it easy for you to wrap a web app that you've maybe created or a web page that's out there in kiosk mode. How does that work?
Yeah, so there actually is we always call it a kiosk wrapper. I don't know that it has a proper name, but essentially it's a small program extension or app that allows you to essentially plug in a URL for a web app. And as long as everything that you need to do is within that one URL, there's no redirects or anything, it'll create a web app for you relatively simply. At that point, you can, like Ray talked about earlier, you can plug it into your private Chrome web store and push it out to devices. This is a great way to do, like we talked about the time clock application. If that's a web-based app that you're using now, it's a great way to set it up and it becomes full screen. You don't see any bookmarks or anything like that at that point. It's a really simple way to just convert a web page into an app that you can install in kiosk mode.
That's pretty cool.
That's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for watching this episode of CloudUp. If you've got more questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. But we'd love to hear from you. So tell us what some of your favorite apps and extensions are. If you've built one for your organization, we'd love to hear about it. We'd love to hear about some of the challenges or maybe things that you figured out along the way.
Yeah, and if you're a developer and you're interested in building an extension or an app or just trying to get started and you have any questions, let us know.
Yeah, you could actually win a CloudUp swag bag. So again, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
CloudUp is brought to you by Agosto, a leading Google Cloud platform partner. Like this episode and subscribe to our channel on YouTube to learn more. We would love to help you out. Visit agosto.com to learn more.